How's it going, folks? So, quick confessional before the episode. I screwed up. I lost the audio for episode 5. So, this episode 5, which I am now making episode 5, is going to be a plus-sized episode. Hour and a half of the Rebelcast. So we've got a lot to get to with Pro Tour Minneapolis just happened. The Pizzabox we participated in, several team members. We took a deck there, find out which one and how we did. And we had a huge announcement from Wizards regarding standard rotation. So stay tuned. The guys have a lot to talk about, especially Darth Rictus at the Dark Stream. Alright, guys. This is Rebelcast, now christened Episode 5.
Alright, where are we starting here, Max?
Right now. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody, to the MTG Rebellion's Rebelcast. We are now on episode 5. Teferi came in here and time warped us all back to a week ago when I didn't lose the audio and data did not get corrupted. So this is now episode 5.
I think of it this way, Max. The Pinkertons did a lot more than we thought they did. They took our audio.
Oh yeah,
You took our audio.
they hacked the mainframe. So this will now be episode 5. Oh my god, I can't believe we figured this out. We actually, what an episode 5. We're coming off of the Pro Tour weekend. Some of us participated in the Pizza Box, so we have a lot to talk about there. We just came off some really crazy announcements from Wizards of the Coast regarding standard rotation and the little sidecar announcement that alchemy rotation is going to be affected as well. So let's where do we begin? Pro Tour. How about it? Who predicted Nathan Stewart?
I don't think it was possible to predict that because it's something that's, I think only LSV has come close to that achievement, and I don't believe anybody else has actually won a World Championship and a Pro Tour in the same year before. But I could be wrong because I know part of winning okay, we'll put it this way. I don't think anybody's ever won a World Championship and then won a Pro Tour in the same year. I know people win Pro Tours, then go play in the World Championships and have a shot at winning. And obviously somebody has run it back like that. But to do it in the reverse order, I have not seen that.
I was shocked. I did not predict it. I thought Jim Davis was going to do really well, and then he ended up doing the opposite of what he did on day 1, on day 2.
He did at first.
And then getting sick on day 3. So I feel really bad for him. I think that's a big story as well that got kind of missed, is 8-0 and then a complete tanking. Gotta feel bad.
I thought it was 9-0. Am I wrong?
It was 8-0 because it's 8 rounds per day for day 1 and day 2. That said, this is the second time that Jim Davis has come really far, only to fail at the end. I remember the other one was the top 8 on a perfect record into a Mythic Championship, where all he needed was literally one more win to queue for Worlds, and then went 0-2 and didn't get to go to Worlds.
Oof.
Yeah, that was a brutal one. The Pro Tour though, Max, it was fun. I know a lot of people are talking about like, oh my god, we have to ban Fable, and I know that's like the popular topic right now because Fable is going to be around. What did you say? Wizards' crazy announcement on standard rotations now 3 years instead of 2, which means Fable and Shieldred, Shieldred, whatever you want to call her, they're around for an extra year now, which everybody was kind of fucking ready for October, I think. And so the internet's up in flames about it, and they want Fable banned. Frankly, I kind of want like 8 bans or 0 bans. I don't really care which, but I could see the argument. I don't know, Max, where are you at on the banning?
Honestly, here's my hot take, and I put it on Doggart Q Bones, that writer, who's now at MTG Storm. But I put it on his Twitter. He was talking about it, and he was saying, it was just like, oh, Fable's gonna get banned. What else should get banned? And I was like, hold on a second. I don't even think Fable or anything should get banned. That was my hot take. I think, as our sideboard guides, our playtesting, our individual streams have shown, there are responses to the card. Granted, they come from specific colors and not others, and I know some of you don't agree with me because we've talked about it today, but I think the card is fine. I think it's a tool belt in a lot of combo decks because combo decks and mid range decks just happen to be popular right now. I think if that shifts, then there are decks that don't run it at all, like the Orzhov deck that we saw Autumn Burchett take to semifinals.
And that's not even bringing up the domain deck that came in. I don't know if that ran Fable, but I'm inclined to believe it didn't, based on the way that mana
No,
base was constructed.
I haven't seen any with Fable, and I've been
So,
fighting a lot of them on Arena.
right, so we have at least 2 archetypes that I believe are tier 1. I think if they top 8 at a Pro Tour, we can say they're either tier 1 or they are the coolest flash in the pan shit you've ever seen. Because it's the Pro Tour. If you're making it to the top 8, you're going to have to win at least 10 matches in all likelihood with your standard deck against the top ranked players in the world. Tells me the archetype's real, right? So Orzhov mid-range, it's real. And Domain, definitely real, although I think it needs more tuning. And neither runs Fable. So I think there's definitely an argument at this point that Fable is not overpowered and that perhaps there are other paths to victory if you wish to move forward. That said, Nathan winning it doesn't help matters for Fable.
Yeah, and also having to see what most people in the chat during the event. I was in the chat for that on Twitch, and we're dreading and talking about not wanting to happen actually ended up happening, which is we saw a Rakdos versus Rakdos final.
Yeah. I mean, at least it was 2 different archetypes, right? It was Rakdos mid versus Rakdos Reanimator, and I'm actually very happy Rakdos Reanimator lost because I'm ready for that deck to lose steam, and it's about time we shuffled into a different meta, which, granted, we have Aftermath coming out this week, don't we?
Oh my gosh, Thursday. Yeah, on Arena anyway.
Or, Tuesday if you're on Twitter and believe what they say.
Are you trying to tell me that everything I read on the interwebs is not indeed factual?
Look, those pills aren't going to make your erection bigger, Dabo. I'm sorry.
It doesn't stop me from trying. I'll just take them all and see which one sticks.
Worst case scenario, you're going to have a hell of an adventure in the meantime, right?
Exactly. I mean, it
So-
started as an adventure. Why not end as one?
So I have up on the screen now the standard metagame breakdown for the from the beginning of the Pro Tour, how it started, and as you can tell, Rakdos mid range, top of the field, Rakdos Reanimator, fourth. This is this what ladder looks like right now for you guys if you're playing ladder on Arena?
What do you
I'm not
think,
seeing
Dabo?
as much Reanimator. I'm seeing more of the Domain. I'm not seeing any Legends lately. But a lot of Rakdos, yeah, and Grixis. I'd say Rakdos, Grixis, and Domain. Probably Domain second.
I'm seeing a lot of mono white too. Actually, I'm playing on the ladder right now.
Fair. So I'll put it this way. I think the Pro Tour proved a point that has been hard for people to understand. I feel like we had a pretty good grasp of it ahead of the Pro Tour, and I'm proud of that. But it's that Esper Legends gets rolled by these lithomantic barrages coming back, coming in the new set. We thought Surge of Salvation would be possibly the most defining card, and I actually think it was lithomantic barrage because having the ability to go up to 8 1-mana removal spells, 4 of which for exactly 1 mana will blow up your Rafines. It's just damning for a deck that requires tempo and relies on clunky mid-range decks to stumble on their removal. And when all of a sudden you can play a tap land and still blow up a creature, it presents a conundrum they can't get out of. So I think really Lithomantic Barrage signaled the finale of Esper Legends, and some people got that memo and most didn't. I'm not saying it's not possible for that deck to win. Shota obviously did really well with it for a while. And I think, was there one person who top 8'd with Esper Legends? Or was that
I believe
most?
so.
So it's possible, but I've run that matchup against my Grixis mid-range build, and I know the Rakdos players on Team Handshake were very confident in the Esper Legends matchup. They actively wanted to play against it. So I think that it's had its day, but it's gone for now. That said, Thursday, Aftermath hits. We get new cards. All of them are Legends, basically. So this might be presumptuous to say that we've seen the last of it because maybe this Aftermath set actually does one thing for one archetype in particular, and I can imagine Legends being that archetype above all the others, frankly, given how many Legends are in this set.
I have up right now the top 8 bracket. We're taking a look. A lot of people expected Javier Dominguez to go all the way. I thought that was kind of a letdown for the fans because a lot of people were cheering on him. Let's see. We see Rakdos mid range, 5-color ramp, Azorius Soldiers. Okay, there was an Azorius Soldiers in the top 8. That was it. No
And
Esper.
that archetype gets the most out of Aftermath objectively. You get the Copper Coat Vanguard, which is going to be absurd, I think, in the soldiers list. And if you want, and I don't know that this will be correct, but if you want, you can go and splash black. The mana's there. Esper is not that hard to build, and a lot of these soldiers are legendary. So you can get Jarina Dauntless General, which could also just slot into Esper Legends. And what I like about this Dauntless General is it gives you the ability to fuck up the reanimator decks while maintaining your curve and ensuring that wrath effects no longer matter from most of the white wraths. Like Depopulate, I think, is going to fall off the face of the map if Jarina becomes a staple in any archetype, and Sunfall is going to be the only way to start wrathing the board because this indestructible hexproof on a free sack effect is powerful.
Taking a look at the card now. Wow. Does anyone
Not to
else in
mention-
here? Anyone else in here play Esper Legends? What do you think of this card?
I do not, but I know that she wrecks majority of my game plans when I'm playing. I like to pull things back from the yard. My graveyard is just a bigger hand that I have access to, and that right there for 2 mana wrecks most of my game plans.
That said, we saw at the Pro Tour in the top 8 list, the sideboard, there were 2 Glistening Deluge on the team handshakes lists, and those will still get through Jarina. So it's worth noting, and Jarina only gives humans hexproof indestructible. I don't know that it'll slot into Legends because of that, but it could slot into soldiers. That said, I don't think it even slots into soldiers because there are so many alternative wrath effects between Glistening Deluge and Sunfall. So I don't know that it slots there because is it really worth a black splash for a card that doesn't necessarily do the job it's supposed to be doing? I doubt it. But this Coppercoat Vanguard in conjunction with Thalia is scary. The ability to have basically a human soldier lord that also gives them Ward 1, you combine that with Thalia, and all of a sudden this removal costs 3-4 mana to hit a 2-drop. And that's the time walk effect you're looking for, that tempo that soldiers needs, so that you don't have to run Protect the Negotiators and you don't have to run counters. You can just push into every creature time walks as long as you're doing it on curve, on tempo. And even if it's not, it's still a relevant effect that will force them to resequence spells. Like, imagine it this way. You have Coppercoat Vanguard out, you have Thalia out. Go for the Throat now costs 4 mana. That's a
Yeah, that's
fuckload of
wild.
mana to spend. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a huge hit against Rakdos specifically, and Grixis as well.
And these Coppercoat Vanguards are not legendary. You can get multiples. You can have a scenario where you have 3 Coppercoats out and everything has Ward 3, except for each other, in which case they have Ward 2 if they are a Coppercoat, because it gives it to each other human. But
So
still,
just with these 2 cards alone, I think we're seeing a boost in 3 different decks that are not the top 2 decks. We're seeing Mono White, Soldiers, and Esper Legends get a boost essentially.
I also think that Blot Out is about to make a hell of an appearance. I would expect that to come in over Soul Transfer in the sideboard for Grixis and Rakdos, because we have to answer Chandra. I know everybody is big on Breach, everybody's big on Atali. I don't like either of those cards. I think those are high variance cards that I understand most of the time they're going to take over the game, but we saw on camera multiple scenarios where Atali hit like a duress and the opponent has nothing in hand. And that feels really rough when your bomb is basically just a 7/7 that can get go for the throated. These blotouts, though, are incredibly important because you have to kill Chandra. Chandra is an engine, it's a finisher, it's everything you want at the top of the curve. There's a reason Team Handshake didn't go higher than Chandra, and they eschewed the 7 drops. That was the correct move. Chandra is the best card to be playing at the top of your curve right now, in my opinion. And Blotout exiles it, which is huge. For 3 mana at instant speed, which is the thing Soul Transfer didn't have. It's the instant speed and it's the exile. So I expect to see Blotouts make an appearance as a 1, 2, or even 3 of in these mid-range lists moving forward that are in black, which is, let's be frank, that's most of them at this point.
Yeah, you and I, sort of transitioning over to Pizzabox, talking a little bit about it. I have up on the screen now the Grixis mid range that the Rebellion team ran. And Darkstream, I know you can talk about this, but I'll go ahead and say it felt good to pilot this list against the other mid-range lists, against the other combo lists, against Esper Legends. It was very much a pilot's deck. Like I had to make a lot of nuanced decisions. I had to sequence correctly, but it wasn't so difficult or so hard to read like an Azorius control or something like that, where having to decide between one type of counterspell versus the other, and it's all about knowing what they might have in their hand versus what's in their graveyard. It was still kind of like that, but with this deck, I felt like I could pilot it much easier. It felt like Rakdos with wings, if I could even say that. And we played with Chandra at the top of the curve, and I'm telling you, it feels great to copy Invoke Despair, even against an Esper Legends deck that had 4 creatures out on the field. I was still able to go over the top, copy Invoke Despair, and then lay down a Sheldred, and I mean, they didn't have a response. It was over.
Lieutenant Watts, you also played this list. How did it feel to you?
I actually really enjoyed the list. I had a couple of matches where I kind of just got shuffle pucked, so those weren't great. But the matches where the shuffler, I didn't flood or I didn't drought. It was a really fun list to play, and I felt like it matched up well against most of the decks that I played against. Of course, I being a less experienced player, I did make some of those gaffes that you don't want to make that were kind of the death knell for me. But as you
And
proved, this deck had a lot of potential.
and sometimes you get shuffle fucked. I had a game in the pizza box on my way to the top 4 where I had 16 lands to 4 spells, and I'm not gonna lie, I was really, really frustrated with that game. I ended up winning the match, but like literally just losing a game to the shuffler where I had like 2 Abrades, a Bank Buster. I don't remember the last card. I think it was another piece of removal, and then 16 straight lands. And I just wanted to destroy the fucking arena program. I was like, you gotta be shitting me. Let me play Magic. I get it.
Yeah. I'm trying to find your specific list to put up on the screen now because I know you and I had a little bit of variance here.
Do you want the update?
I found it. Yeah, we need to post the update as well. But here was exactly the list that you ran, and let's talk about a little bit of the differences here. I know it was in the sideboard, wasn't it? Yep. I think you went 2 Katose, and I went 1 Katose, 1 Cruelty of Gix. And you did better than I did, but talk to us about Katose, because a lot of people don't know about that card, or don't remember that it's in standard, or don't really know how to use it at all. So talk to our audience a little bit about Katose, because I think that had a unique place in the sideboard.
Yeah, Katose, I had it wrong, and I can freely say that I've bumped it back down to 1 copy, but I really like the 1 copy. The reason we were on 2 is because White Midrange, Domain, and Reanimator were 3 archetypes I was concerned with, and my plan against those with Grixis Midrange is I have the 2 Make Disappear, I have the Negate in the main. Post board, we get the 2 Katose, we get the 3 Disdainful Stroke, and all of a sudden there's 6 counters, and then we have 2 ways to just rip the rest of that shit out of their deck. So if you counter 1 Atraxa and then you Katose, you get to grab all the Atraxas, and they don't get to draw. If you rip them all out of their hand, they just lose them. There is no replacement effect there, like there are for like Stone Brain. You know what I mean? Where it lets you draw if you take stuff out of their hand. No, Katose just rips that shit out. So let's say you counter an Atraxa, you rip it all out with Katose, you then get to play one of those copies using any color of mana you would like. So, you play Katose. If it survives a turn and you have 7 mana, then you could just cast an Atraxa yourself. And let's remember, they have no Atraxas themselves now. You are now the only Atraxa deck, even though you don't even play it in the fucking deck. And that was the point of Katose, is that it could take their best card, allow you to counter it, and then play it against them. So that we didn't have to play these clunky 7 drops. We could just counter them and then play them. And that was kind of the point, is that we didn't want to have a scenario where we countered an Atraxa and then countered another Atraxa, and then they got the 3rd one down, and we're like, well, that's life. No. I wanted it to be like, counter, I rip them all out, they're mine now, you have to be on the back foot. As a ramp deck, we took the best thing you could be doing, and we're playing it against you now. So that was the point of Katose.
That and the scenario, right, where they just, you counter the Atraxa and then they Cruelty of Gix it into play. This is better than that. This rips it out of their control completely. It's not sitting in their graveyard waiting to be reanimated. It's gone.
Yeah, and you don't have to play the Atraxas either. If you're worried about opening up a Cruelty of Gix, like you play Katose, they don't kill it, you play Atraxa, then they kill the Atraxa, then they Cruelty their Atraxa back, because it'll go to their graveyard. You can just leave it in exile. You don't have to play it. And it is a 4/4 body. And the reason for this is like all these lists were playing Stonebrain. And Stonebrain at 4 mana is just 1 mana shy of what Katose is trying to do. And granted, Stonebrain hits it before you counter anything. So in many situations like Mono White, you're going to go Stonebrain. But when you're already playing counter spells, and Katose's in blue, so you're probably going to, I think Stonebrain is the wrong choice, and Katose is the correct one, because you have the ability to rip them all out for 1 mana more and get a 4/4 body and cast it potentially. And that's just a huge difference to me.
I was able to use it to steal, and if you look at the playback, it was my proudest moment. Towards the end of a match, I stole their Corpse Appraisers in their library because they had, they were on the back foot, they were, against the wall. I just needed to final push it, and I chose to play Katose, and I was like, all right, there's no Atraxa, there's no Invoke Despair, there's nothing in this graveyard that's, worth a damn. But there is a Corpse Appraiser. I know that means they have 4. I know that could be an out for them. They could, pull the Go for the Throat, kill my Sheldred, and get through. So that's what I decided to pull in that situation. It was very helpful there. So it doesn't always have to be the biggest thing possible. Sometimes you just take away like a cornerstone, and that can be enough.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A few other notes about the list. 3 Abrade, I think, actually was correct and relevant. I know a lot of people are running like 4 Bankbusters, 1 Abrade. I actually like a 3-2 split in favor of Abrade, and here's the reason for that. Your Bankbusters are awkward against anything aggressive. You are time walking
Right.
yourself, and if you have Abrades, you can answer opponents' Bankbusters, but you can also answer their fucking creatures, which is why I like it, because yeah, you're gonna have scenarios where they just draw more Bankbusters than you. But if you're drawing Abrades and an Abrade for every Bankbuster they draw, you're gonna be fine. Like that extra card may make a difference here and there, but in general, these games are much more tempo based and much more snowbally than that. So 1 card difference if they played Bankbuster on 4 and drew the card in response to the Abrade, that's fine. Not a big deal. I do think the 3 Abrades is correct at this point, because you need to answer Bankbusters on the other side because you're running less of them on yours, and you also need to not do that thing that all these other Grixis mid-range lists are doing, where they play all of this grindy shit and then they just get tempoed out by mono red. So, other fun points. The Chandra number. We had 1. I already bumped it to 2. That card is absurd. 2 is the correct number. Play 4 Invoke, play 2 Chandra, whether it's Rakdos, Grixis, or fucking anything with red and black in it. 4 Invoke, 2 Chandra feels amazing.
Yeah, that's a deck. You don't really need. I know this is going to be a hot take, but you don't need to go all the way to Breach the Multiverse necessarily. If you want to do one in the sideboard, I do, because the idea of being able to copy that sounds epic. But honestly, that card, and this is just a sneak preview for something in the future, I think that goes in either Orzhov or Mardu with something like Sarah's Paragon, or something that can bring back small stuff from your graveyard, if you think about it. But anyway.
I don't recommend copying Breach, only because you're going to be dangerously close to decking yourself. I've done it. I've actually decked myself using Breach because it got copied, or because it hit Natali that hit another Breach and I wasn't paying attention, and I had enough cards until I didn't. It's not exactly the best thing to copy.
You're in good company there, Perry Dabo. I think that's also, if I'm not mistaken, what happened to Reed Duke this past weekend.
I saw it happen, and then I had it happen later on that afternoon while I was playing on the ladder.
Oh man, you're not one of those people who can learn through a third-hand experience, are you? You gotta do it yourself.
I just wasn't paying attention to how much my library had. I do now.
I had to touch the stove as a kid too, man.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Other alterations, since we're talking about Grixis, and initially I was just going to do a Grixis sideboard guide update yet again, but since we have Aftermath coming in, I figured fuck it, I'm going to do just some very brief notes unless you guys want to talk about something else.
We got a couple other topics, but let's go there first. What have you got for us? Because I honestly I looked at all the spoilers and they all just like slipped right through my mind. Maybe because I was excited about Pro Tour, but yeah, I need a little bit of help here. What do we got looking forward to?
I think the biggest thing that I learned playing against Nathan Stoyer's list, because that was one of my losses, and I think Carl Serap's list was the other one. So it was two Rakdos mid-range lists were the two losses I had. I went 6-2 overall, and that ended me in the top 4. And in both scenarios, Razor Lash Transmogrant was the biggest issue. And what I learned from that is when we're playing Grixis and we're going up against these Rakdos decks, we need to be playing Razor Lash Transmogrant ourselves because it is an incredibly difficult card to answer. And I know people are like, "Oh, there's Graveyard Trespassers." There's only 2. And even if there were 4, I'd still run the fucking Transmogrants. And here's the point. Maybe you play it on 2, they kill it, they trespass it, that's fine. There's going to be a lot of games where you get to turn 6 and you play it and they kill it and there's 2 black mana sitting there and they trespass and you just put it right back in play and then they kill it and you do it again and you just keep doing it. And it allows you to play this tempo game that I think complements the amount of counter spells we have perfectly. Because what's scarier than a scenario where we pass with blue, red, black up and a transmogrant just sitting in the graveyard? We're like, no matter what you do, we're going to get a 4-2 at the end of this turn and we're probably going to counter your big spell. And then we're going to get back to our turn with fully open mana where we can resolve our own Invoke or a Chandra and smash with a Transmogrant. Like, it's just so cheap, so efficient, so difficult to deal with. And it lost, I think I lost 3 games strictly to Rakdos midrange getting Razor Lash Transmogrant and just pushing my shit in. You know, where I'm like, oh, I'll Invoke. And they're like, okay, well, recur it and sack it to Invoke so you draw 1 less card. And then recur it again. And then swing it 4. And I'm like, God, there's no getting rid of this shit. Like, there's just no way to do it unless it times out perfectly that I get a Corpse Appraiser on 3 after blowing it up on 2, and that happened twice. But if it hadn't happened like that, those games were probably losses as well. It is a big problem. It is not easy to answer. Obliterating Bolt is in the sideboard for a reason. I didn't bring it in for those matchups.
Oh
I have
yeah.
regrets on that front. But ultimately, rather than trying to bring in more Obliterating Bolts for that shit, I think the solution is play more Razor Lash yourself and be the better Razor Lash deck that can tempo. Because I think what Grixis has as an angle that Rakdos doesn't have is pushing that tempo hard. Because Rakdos has no way to deal with the top end. Whatever you're playing, it's resolving. But Grixis can absolutely just giggle and counter. It doesn't care.
Thank you. What do we have to look forward to for the Grixis deck in this next set? Because I did not initially see anything. What did you see in Aftermath?
So Blot Out's coming in over the Soul Transfer in the sideboard. The 2 and a black, target opponent exiles a creature or planeswalker they control with the greatest mana value among creatures and planeswalkers. So it's going to hit Chandras, it's going to hit Shieldreds, and sometimes it's going to hit their Razor Lash Transmogrant and exile it. That's a
Yeah.
huge upgrade because it's instant speed. It's a huge upgrade. We're playing 1, if not 2 of those in the sideboard, and possibly 1 in the main. That card is probably going to be like a 3-1 split with Go for the Throat now, because we can afford. And this gets to a different point. I apologize. The Corpse Appraisers are getting shaved down to 2 because of the fact that these mid-range matchups do not have enough targets to regularly kill creature on 2, play it on 3. You don't get that sequence often enough, so we shave it down to 2, which opens up 3 drops, which means Blot Out can go in and without fucking up the curve. So that's where I think Aftermath primarily is going to shift things, is that Blot Out is a huge get for us.
Okay. And so anything for Rakdos, because I know that deck is going to be around for a very long time, and it has a lot of really tight spots that are competing, especially in like the 2, 3, 4 mana value spots, which are very critical. Anything for that deck?
Just Blot Out. It's literally everything I could find for all of these, and that's good because none of these decks, Rakdos, Grixis, black-based decks, none of them need help right now. They are at the top for a reason. They are very powerful. I'm mostly looking to see what other archetypes, like we talked earlier, Soldiers is going to get some pieces. There is a Bug Legends deck that may emerge due to the fact that they printed Animist's Might, and then they printed Nashi Moon's Legacy. And between the 2 of those, I'm very curious if we end up with a Bug Legends deck in the future.
I saw Nashi. That was one of the ones I did retain. What that one does, and yeah, I like that. It's like mini reanimator, right?
Yeah, so you don't get Rafine in Bug, but this becomes the new Rafine because it still has Ward 1. It also has Menace, and it's a 3/4, but when it attacks, being able to exile any of your legendary things, which is basically your whole deck, from your graveyard to copy it and cast the copy means that now if they don't answer Nashi, unlike Rafine that's going to kind of snowball your individual creatures, Nashi just goes, I'm, sure you killed the first one, but like, have you had second Thalia for breakfast? You know?
Oh my god, second Thalia.
Right, right. And we get Animist's Might, which, if you haven't read that, it's a sorcery for 2 and a green, but it's going to cost 2 less to cast if it targets a legendary creature you control. So in a Bug Legends deck, that presumably costs a single green. And what it does is makes target creature you control deal damage equal to twice its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. So that is a 1 mana soft but decent removal spell to go into the Bug Legends deck that may or may not exist at the end of all this. I don't know that it's going to be stronger than Esper Legends, but the fact of the matter is, it's now up for discussion on whether it can exist.
All right. Wow. I'm not looking forward to Thursday, honestly. I mean, like, I am and I'm not. I am because obviously new cards, mixing things up. That's what it's all about. But I'm not because I don't have anything planned. I don't have any deck builds planned for this one. So it's gonna be a surprise come Saturday when I'm streaming and I gotta do a deck building stream. I don't know what I'm gonna do, guys. Do you guys have any plans for any decks you want to build coming up?
I have
Dabo?
none yet.
Mm,
I have nothing
no.
yet. I'm excited about some of the cards, but I haven't put together any decks. Uh,
I think they were the same. Good cards, but I mean, we could make an Esper Knights deck.
I
Sure.
did exactly that in Alchemy already for best of one. So yeah, I'm hoping that becomes a thing because there's potential in Esper Knights in multiple formats actually.
The
Mm,
card there is one card that is it could be built around heavily. The Narset coming in off of
that's what
this.
I'm looking at right now. She looks
mhm.
gas.
You put that in the right kind of deck, and I want to be clear, it's not going to be a deck that's heavy on counter spells. It's going to be like tokens probably. But that at the top of a tokens list could be absurd.
Mm, What do
All
you
right,
think about the new Nahiri?
I mean, I'm thinking like a lot of burn and a lot of little cantrip type things, right? Just so
Exactly.
we can.
let's talk about the new Nahiri too, but I'm looking at the Narset first, the Enlightened Exile, and for those of you at home who haven't looked at this yet, basically creatures you control have prowess. And that text by itself is amazing, especially for a Jeskai deck.
Right. Isn't
But
that enough?
I know, it
What?
feels
Wait,
like that
there's
should be
more.
enough. But we got to have more because, we expect commander level standards here from our legendaries now. So, whenever Narset attacks, exile target non-creature, non-land card with mana value less than Narset's power from a graveyard, copy it. You can cast the copy without paying its mana cost.
Amazing.
I'm trying to think.
Tokens is really where this is at its
Yeah.
best because creatures get prowess. And imagine if you have Monastery Mentor into Narset, and then everything else
Right.
is like raise the alarm effects. You're going to get
Yeah.
to cast them. They're all going to get prowess. They're going to blow up the Mentors because they have to. And then you have Narsets. But basically, you have 8 cards now that run away with the game if they don't answer it between Mentor and Narset. So I'm very curious if that's legit or not. I'm scared that it won't be because we exist in a format with Go for the Throat and it's a 4 mana vanilla creature until it attacks.
Yeah, I'm having problems with keeping the shark on the field to create tokens right now. And I'm still looking for a shell for that card. I feel like the Chrome Shark is in the future going to be something, but I just don't see it yet. Maybe Jeskai or the colors. So I'll be testing it out in Jeskai. That's the only
See about
idea I've got.
Esper.
There
I
is
thought
also
Esper for the Sky Shark. I just haven't got around to building it.
there will also potentially be a Grixis Dragons list that's worth discussing because Sarkhan plus Rivas means you have 6 to 8 3-drops that all speed up your dragons now.
My problem with Sarkhan is that uh, you can't copy the legendary dragons. I mean, unless you want to sacrifice it.
Well, it depends on the dragon, but imagine Tyrant of Care Ridges. where it has
Mm-hmm.
a Flame Tongue Kavu effect. I could see that. Like, it comes in, blows up a creature, Sarkin becomes a 4/5 with flying, smacks in. That could be a thing. There's also Moonveil, something. I don't know. I haven't looked through all the fucking dragons, but there's potential. And I'm actually gonna
Yeah.
jump into my collection and just double check what dragons are running around because I haven't looked in a minute.
You can go Jeskai. Do you guys know that one of my favorite pet cards of all time is still standard legal, and you wouldn't believe it. It's going to be standard legal for a while now. Maniform Hellkite.
Yes, I was hoping you're gonna
Just
say that.
Yeah,
But
I see
yes.
a Jeskai deck.
I see a
Maybe
Jeskai dragons with a lot of good support and auxiliary spells
Uh-huh.
to keep them going. A lot of one drop like slip out the back to keep things up. I don't know. I'm thinking in that direction though.
Well, what if we
About
went?
the Jeskai Dragons. What do you think about Need Me Set?
You know, Hidetsugu is a dragon, right?
Yeah, you could go Grixis.
And if you go,
Dragon, demon, ogre.
right, you also get Rivas of the Claw, which is another card that does quite well.
Oh
allowing you to cast
yeah.
dragons early. So you
Mhm.
have these Sarkins, you have Rivas, and basically you're saying these are my 3-drops, these legends. You're going to play 3 Rivas, 3 Sarkin, and you're going to try and push it into your bigger drops, which would be Hidetsugu potentially. And you actually,
Mhm.
that's a weird combo thing you could get with Sarkin. Think about it. It becomes a legend, right? Which means you'd have to sacrifice the Hidetsugu, so it'd be an instant win with explosive singularity. If you had Sarkin into Hidetsugu, putting singularity back on top, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my god, does Maniform Hellkite make like a crazy token from that? I don't remember based on the text.
Yeah.
But here's the other piece worth noting with Sarkin. There are certain dragons you want to die, like Junji.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention at sushi.
Yeah, and you have AO in there as well.
And you have Kyrie if you really want it, although I don't.
Yeah, that's the weakest, but yeah.
But Junji, imagine your top end is 4 Junjis, a couple of Hidetsugus, 3 Sarkins, 3 Rivas, 4 Invasion of Tarkir, because that's finally excellent. And maybe you dump in a few other cards as well, like some Itsushis. I don't know, but you can see this deck. I don't know that it's good, but fuck, it looks fun. You know what I mean?
Right. This is my jank Saturday night right here.
You know, throw some go for the throats and some cut downs in the lower end, maybe a Brotherhood's End or two to keep all the, kiddies in check. And who fucking knows? Maybe it's good enough. I don't know. It's interesting at least.
Is it? We got the invasion. It does damage based on how many dragons you reveal, right?
Yeah, Invasion of Turkey.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that becomes good removal in a Dragon's deck.
Oh, it becomes excellent with Sarkin too, doesn't it? You can become a copy of anything. Dragon enters the battlefield, so it would enter the battlefield when it
yes.
flips, right?
Oh
Yep.
my god. Yeah.
Right. So if you
You
get it to
can
flip,
copy
it enters
that.
the battlefield. You have and how long is that? Is it till end of turn? Okay,
You will
so
be
it wouldn't.
seeing 8 damage when
Woo!
both dragons attack.
I like the sound of
8 crit
that.
points of damage.
I don't think the sequencing quite works typically, but I don't know because you'd already have to have swung to kill it in most scenarios. Although you could play Nahiri's Warcraft, blow up the invasion, it pops in. Now Sarkin becomes the Defiant Thundermaw, swings, and there's 4 points plus an additional 2 triggers. I don't know.
Yeah.
There might be something here. It's interesting.
Really
Let's
wouldn't mind
transition.
there being a good dragon.
Yeah,
Good dragon
agreed.
deck around. It sounds fun.
You
When
can also run-
Dragon's a good litmus test for a healthy standard, in my opinion. If you can make dragons healthy, that shows you that it's a healthy standard.
You can also run Friction Dragon Engine.
Yes, you can.
And I believe there's a few other potential options. I'd have to look through them all just to be sure. But there's no shortage of dragons these days. So I'm very curious about Sarkin. I'm also very curious. We were going to talk about Nahiri. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what I was trying to
Yeah.
transition to. We have Nahiri, Forged in Fury on the screen for the folks at home. It is a 6-drop with Boros Devotion in the cost, 4 colorless, but it has affinity for equipment, and it comes in as a legendary creature this time, a 5/4. That says whenever an equipped creature you control attacks, exile the top card of your library, and when you may play that card this turn, you may cast equipment spells this way without paying their mana costs. So there's already a Boros equipment deck that's like tier 2.5, if I may, out there swimming around, and it needs stuff. If it stays like just an equipment deck, it doesn't go human or anything like that. Are there any cards in this upcoming set for it besides this?
Mm,
I don't think so. And
no.
is the current Boros equipment shell does it need this card? I think it does. I think it needs a top end. It desperately does because it isn't able to hold up. Like it runs out of gas eventually against most of the stuff that's like tier 2, tier 1 in my opinion. So it needs a good top end, but is that in Darkstream Darth Rictus, in your opinion, is that enough?
I see a card like this and I just feel like it screams trap. Um, I don't know. I haven't found a way that this is actually going to work out. I mean, compare this to Chandra at 6. You know what I mean? Is the power level really high enough to get it out and get it moving quickly enough? Or are we just looking at an ideal circumstance and praying it happens every time?
I mean, you will never play Nahiri for 6 men.
That's a good point.
You're putting it in an equipment deck, and we have now the Formidable deck, Formidable equipment.
Oh yeah, that's right.
You bring the equipment, and it brings you a creature. I mean, this Nahiri could hit the battlefield in turn 4 or 3 if you get lucky with your equipments.
It's definitely a way to go aggro in a list that's
Mm.
really aiming for mid range. I like that deck a lot. I just don't know. Surge of Salvation is here. Maybe that deck could take advantage of that in the current meta. I'm trying to think of what else in the white red.
I don't know. It's been a minute for me on that one. I don't. But this aftermath set, it's deep. There's actually more to it than I thought there would be. I really thought this was going to be a pile of trash with a couple of gems, and the more I look at it, the more I see pieces that could either start archetypes or finish them.
That's how I feel. Like it's actually connecting the dots. Just there's a couple things that certain things needed. It's finally at least fulfilling some of it.
I see right off the rip, I see like 4 cards that are going to be relevant. Like this Ob Nixilis Captive Kingpin is going to be super
Oh, yeah.
relevant in multiple
You kidding?
formats for Rakdos Sacrifice.
Absolutely.
This
Pia
pot,
Nalar will
yeah,
actually be relevant and historic.
Yeah.
Him with all will be one. Pretty sure it goes infinite.
this Rocco Street Chef. There's already a Naya Legends list out there. But just like Naya creatures in Alchemy and in Standard.
I
And
Yeah.
think Kenrith's Royal Funeral may go in as a sideboard option for Esper Legends.
Okay.
And Goldforge Thopteryx will probably go in as a 1 of to 2 of in Esper Legends as well.
Also, I think that Karn, Legacy Reforged, can go in clone decks.
I love that. I love that Goldforge Thopteryx. That was going to be my favorite card, I was going to say, of Aftermath, because I feel like that's ready for Esper Legends. But
what I like about it is it potentially pulls together a scenario where your opponent has to have cut downs or lithomantic barrages because the Go for the Throats can't hit that one. It's an artifact, and it gives these other legendary permanents Ward 2, which means Go for the Throat is now at least, 4 mana to hit a target. So I think it presents some interesting sequencing issues for opponents where they have to hit lithomantic barrage or cut down to get rid of that before they can play other removal spells. Which again, that's what you're looking for, is ways to time walk them. Give yourselves a free turn.
Think about rebuild the city. I like playing Jund, and it just looks ridiculous.
I don't know that I've even seen this one yet. Choose land.
It's 6 mana sorcery.
Wow. That gives you 3 lands, 3/3.
Do you think somebody's going to play Lotus Field combo with that? Because that would be sick.
I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, those would
It
be
just looks amusing to
hexproof.
me.
Well,
Don't
they'd
add
be
fuel to that
hexproof.
fire.
I'm just saying it'd be hexproof, indestructible, vigilant, and menace, and they'd be 3/3s.
Right.
Yeah.
We get a bunch of hives that don't exile anything when they attack, but 3/3 menace with vigilance? That's ridiculous.
That's intriguing. That's
So
very intriguing.
you wipe the
Those
board and now you
things.
got 3/3/3s next turn.
I could see
There's
that as a weird win con for control deck in Jund, actually.
Right. I
Mhm.
mean, when I started playing standard before the last rotation, I mean, we still had the man lands in there. And how many times did boards just get cleared and all of a sudden somebody's swinging through with a damn that 7/7 blue land or whatever? Or I can't tell you how many games I won with Hive alone.
I'm actually incredibly intrigued by Niv Mizzet Supreme for
I
Explorer.
want to talk about that.
Yeah, well, in Explorer, most of the good removal is going to be monocolored. There isn't going to be a lot of because like Vanishing Verse is multicolored, but it doesn't hit multicolored spells. There just isn't a lot of ways to
Oh
deal with it.
God,
Like,
yeah, you're right. What were you gonna say,
so
Luis, about this card? I know in Explorer. That's a good point though. In Explorer, you're right about that. Oh my God, I'm gonna build it. Luis, what were you gonna
and
say?
And I want to put it in a Jeskai Dragon deck. I mean, the
Yeah,
mana is not excellent, but it's not also difficult to get it. And in, I mean, even if I'm imagining things, but if we play it with Narset and as the legendary dragon,
yeah,
but would you type? I mean, you can draw each turn a spell and cast it again from your
yeah.
graveyard. I think it's not easy to remove. There is not a lot of removal that can kill it in standard also.
And that
I
three
mean,
drop, that three drop
mm,
that helps cast dragons. You could use treasure tokens. We could do the 4 plazas like people use to cast Atraxa. There's all sorts of ways to
yeah.
figure out how to spend 5, Wubberga in a 3-color deck. Like that's very possible right now.
there's multiple scenarios I could see these Niv Mizzet decks. We've been utilizing in Explorer the Niv Mizzet Reborn decks, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think the slots in as a perfect one of in that deck because you're already going to be running all of these different 2-color instants and sorceries to get off of Niv Mizzet Reborn, and then you can have a Niv Mizzet Supreme to then recast all of them later in the game. So it's potentially a strong one of there for the really grindy matchups.
Um,
It's not easy to block. I mean, you need a multicolored creature to block even if it's attacking. Might do like blood the card.
I was gonna say all of these, like this set is just a bunch of signposts. That's all this is, just a bunch of deck ideas in a set. I was gonna point to Sigarda, Font of Blessings, as resuscitating Selesnya humans, which is already a list, and I've been using Augur of Autumn to do basically what this card's gonna be able to do in one card. So I can pull those 4 slots for something even better in that deck. But I mean, that's another deck I want to build.
Well, with
Have you seen Piana Lab for the Chorus token in Historic?
Mm-hmm.
No, I have not. I have not thought about that.
Yeah, Pia Nalar
And
in
super,
Historic is going to be a big deal.
yeah. Stutters we control have haste. I mean, stutters with haste. Oh, that's gonna hit.
It will. It will. The Sigarda, going back to it, if you get to, I don't know if it's in Explorer, but I know it's in Historic. If you do Sigarda plus Shalai, then all your permanents will have hexproof, and you will as well.
Oh my god, that's
Yeah,
insane.
that actually happened to me earlier in a game, and it was I was completely caught off guard by it.
Yeah, there's that
Yeah,
planeswalker that does it now in Arena. It's like the 3-cost planeswalker, the shield one.
right. And actually, right next to it, if
Mm-hmm.
you look on the spoiler, this Tivar the Bellicose, Elves might be fucking real finally. That card is insane for elves.
Really, I gotta take a look. I haven't looked at this card yet.
So all your elves attacking now have Death Touch. It's a 5/4 legendary Tivar for 2 black-green, and each creature, whenever you use the mana ability, gets that many +1/+1 counters equal to the mana it produced. So imagine all these Llanowar elves. Every time you tap them, now it's a 2/2, now it's a 3/3, now it's a 4/4. You know what I mean? Like you are just bumping them while you're growing your army while you're deploying your army because of this card. And then they all get Death Touch. So even the small shit that came out, now it blocks everything as long as you're swinging. That's
Oh my god.
the card is absurd for elves.
There's the
Sorry.
put that with Finn. That I mean Finn the Fangbearer in that card.
Right?
So we have Danita. I think it will be a return of can make stun the enchantment. The Celestial enchantment decks return.
Oh wow, yeah.
Danita
Lieutenant
needs
Watts
Banana's Light.
loves that.
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
Danitha, New Benalia's Light, Vigilance, Trample, Lifelink. Once during each of your turns, you can cast an aura or equipment spell from your graveyard. If you're playing with like aura enchantments, especially.
The aura enchantments, come on now. Those are for scrubs.
Yeah, Danitha is a very specific pickup for equipment or auras, most likely auras.
Mm-hmm.
The one
Yeah.
card I think people have overlooked heavily, Thamut, Vizier of Naktamun. That card might actually make 8 whack possible in Explore if we get Reckless Bushwhacker in the near future. To clarify for the audience, 1 red, green, legendary, 2/3, first strike, vigilance, haste, and whenever creature you control deals combat damage to a player, if it entered the battlefield this turn, draw a card. So when you play it, if it swings through, you're already drawing a card. But if you've played the Bushwhacker deck, it's nothing but hasty creatures. Imagine this with like Robber of the Rich, Fervent Champion, like Legion Loyalist, Reckless Bushwhacker. All of a sudden, you're smacking them for 10 and you're drawing 5. And this would be the top of the curve at 3 mana.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my god. That's
So
crazy.
I think there's an argument to be made that there is going to be an 8 whack deck that's possible in the future. It's not there yet. They haven't given us either of the 8 whack goblins. Because it's Goblin Bushwhacker and Reckless Bushwhacker. They haven't given us either. But eventually, if they want to sync this up to older formats, they're going to give it to us. And when they do,
Okay.
Samut is going to be fucking nuts.
Oh man, the side Calix is also very good. Now this is one for enchantments. Calix guided by Fate has Constellation. Whenever Calix guided by another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 plus counter on target creature. Whenever Calix on an enchanted creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may create a token that's a copy of a non-legendary enchantment you control.
What?
So it's going to
What?
turn all your
Uh,
enchanted creatures
yeah, you heard it.
into copies. Yeah.
And then you put that down with the hallowed haunting, and you just make tokens upon tokens upon
Yep.
tokens upon
Yeah.
tokens, because everything's an enchantment.
That deck might actually be real now. The Hallowed Haunting deck might be fucking broken with.
That was one of my-
Hallowed haunting is real, homie. I play it
Yeah.
on ladder every day.
Yeah, Hallowed Haunting does work when it goes off. You just
Yeah, when
gotta-
it goes off, which is why it's pretty much capped at like Diamond. Like in Mythic, it has a hard time.
Right.
But-
The question is, can it survive when it gets a few additional pieces? Does this bring it
Yes.
into tier 1 from tier 1.5?
Yeah, and I think it does. And I like that deck too.
This, along with Tribute to the World Tree, makes all the difference, because like Tribute to the World Tree becomes a massive card draw engine once it starts running along a Hallowed Haunting that's just being fueled by cheap enchantments every turn.
Oh my
Fair.
god, it's gonna be like runes all over again.
Oh gosh.
Okay. Also, in the non-legendary creatures, have you seen Metropolis Reform? It's
I'm looking
an
for it.
What color is
white
it?
mana.
White.
White. It's an Angel
Oh
Fury.
yeah.
Yep.
Oh wow.
A lot of text, or not a lot of text, but the text is important.
Long didn't read. Just play the card.
We need a good like 3-slot angel.
I think
This
this
is an
one.
interesting one. This is a very interesting one. It gives you a potential in the future for a backdoor worship pariah kind of combo. So I'm very intrigued by that. The ability to like have worship Metropolis and then find one way to give it indestructible and lock your opponent. That's a thing that can happen. I'm not saying it's likely. I'm just saying these things we got to keep track of them because sometimes enough of these pieces come into play where all of a sudden you just get incidental combos. And I think that's a piece of deck building that a lot of people haven't necessarily been around long enough to understand. But like you look at a deck like Grixis midrange or Rakdos midrange, the power level of every card on there is either busted or utility. That's the whole deck. Like you have Shieldred, Invoke, Chandra, busted. Then you have Cut Down, Go for the Throat, Abrade, Blood Tithe Harvester, utility. And that's the whole deck. It's just grindy answers followed by bombs moving forward. And why I say this in regards to Metropolis Reformers, because it's an angel, and there are angel decks. You can Coco this into play. You can Kayla's Reconstruction this into play. If there are other angels printed in the near future that have other effects that interact with this card's going to go bonkers. Right now, I don't see a use for it, but I can tell you that it opens doors in the future.
It
Well,
does
doesn't
stop.
this stop me from invoking somebody because they'll have hexproof?
Yep. Yep.
They can't be
Right.
invoked. You get this indestructible, then the answers. I mean, you still have the exile removal answers, but it makes it harder to interact with. So you give it indestructible. It shuts down mono red burn because they can't burn to the face. It's indestructible, which is going to be most of their answers for something like this. It won't be exile based.
The
So
down the downside to this card is that cut down, Abrade, and Go for the Throat, I'll kill it. That's the downside. And Lithomantic Barrage and Obliterating Bolt. Like all the played removal kills this card. But it also comes off Kayla's Reconstruction. So we'll see if it finds a home at some point.
Yeah.
So, have you looked at Nahir's Resolve? It's basically a teleportation circle, but for your whole board, if you'd like.
I like that.
Interesting.
So, think you just have at least one Titan of Industry or one Atraxa down or one Atali down. You get to blink it. You get to blink your whole board if you like every turn, and they have haste now, and they're +1. Now,
Ah,
given they
yeah.
won't be there at the next turn, so your opponent's turn, so they can't even kill your things if they wanted to.
I'm working on a Mardu reanimation list that's the same basic principle, trying to get Itali and Trax on the field. This would fit into there because that list doesn't have any like other 5-drops than the cruelty.
The hard part with Nahiri's Resolve is that it has to exist in a format with Invoke Despair, which dismantles it.
Agreed. That does make it rough.
But the effect is strong. Like blinking a Portal to Phyrexia, pretty big deal. Blinking Atraxa, pretty big deal.
Right.
Blinking Corpse Appraisers even would be interesting. Blood Tithe Harvester is still good. I don't know. There's a lot of potential blink targets. So when you see blink cards, red alerts just go off in my fucking head because I
Yeah.
played in the era of momentary blink when it was first printed, and that was absurd. So
till the first instep though. So like you would get at least one blink off of it before you're required to sacrifice it to invoke, and that's going to be strong in and of itself.
That's if you're only playing one enchantment, though.
that's also if you're only have one blink target. Like if you get one mass blink and you get to blink 3 permanents before an Invoke Despair hits, that might be worth it.
Run
Right.
this.
Yeah.
I
So-
mean, chances are it's got red in it. Chances are you're going to be running Fable. So if they go to invoke, you'll get rid of that enchantment if it's more important, or I guess this one if it depends on where you're at in the game. But I can see this thing being fun in my little jank games that I like to play with my moderator and chat in general.
You 3-drop the angel that gives you hexproof. You 4-drop the Mardu angel that has lifelink and does damage.
Uh-huh.
And then you 5-drop this and you blink that angel.
There
Well,
are
then-
also some. Go ahead.
I just say even things like a circuit mender at that point. You know what I mean? Comes in, you'll gain 2 life. When it leaves, you draw a card.
Yeah.
You know, just simple things like that. Just every turn, slight advantage. Every turn, slight advantage.
This is true. The other piece worth noting, there are 2 role players in the multicolored and common section we haven't covered. The first one, Campus Renovation, gives us yet another way to fast track Portal to Phyrexia into play. That's interesting to me.
Yes.
And the other one next to it is Cosmic Rebirth, which doesn't look like a lot on first blush, but understanding that in the future there may be a green-white X deck that plays a combo that's low to the ground, and this will put it right back on the battlefield if they blow it up, means I'm keeping an eye on this as well. Any other cards you're looking at there,
Oh.
Max?
No, nothing in mind. That was everything I had. I told you guys this one flew by me, but thank you for highlighting everybody. Some of your best picks here. Feast of the Victorious Dead looks interesting. The white-black enchantment. Beginning your end step. One or more creatures died this turn. You gain that much life and distribute that many 1/1s among creatures you control. I don't know that it fits into anything, obviously, but
I'm actually very intrigued by the Tranquil Frillback in green, the 2 green 3/3 dinosaur that allows you to you can pay green mana up to 3 times on top of the mana cost. And if you do, you get to blow up that many. Let's say you choose up to that many. Destroy target artifact or enchantment, exile a graveyard, you gain
Ooh.
4 life. So the fact that at 4 mana, you are now like 3/3 body, okay, not amazing. But you also get a hill giant that blows up an artifact into an enchantment or just blows out a graveyard. That's interesting
yeah.
to me.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. And
And,
it's a dinosaur.
and let's also remember it's an ETB effect that you get to do. So if you blink it with, say, Nahiri's Resolve, you could do that the next turn again.
And just pay the one green mana.
Exactly. So I'm intrigued by a lot of these cards. I don't think there are homes for half the cards in this set yet, but it opens doors. Like I said, like either this is finishing off some archetypes that needed a card or 2 here or there, or this is opening doors in the future for other archetypes to exist. So I'm actually a huge fan of the set. I don't think it's necessarily busted in any way, shape, or form, but it's interesting in what it's going to do. And, whether I like it or not, shit's coming in on Thursday, so let's get ready.
Exactly. Oh,
Talking
wow.
about the future,
Reckless handling
do
lets
you?
us actually search for an artifact so we can find that portal to discard to bring back with
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Which
Mhm.
card is this?
reckless handling. It's
Reckless
2 mana,
handling.
1 red, 1 generic, has Nahiri on it.
Almost at the bottom.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right.
Okay, so we can just straight up find it's gamble +1 for red. Okay, they reprinted gamble in a more functional form. Interesting, interesting take.
Yeah, not
Okay.
bad.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sold on trying it out at least once. There's gonna be a reckless handling, invoke calamity, fucking portal to Phyrexia deck with campus renovations and other shit.
Yeah.
It's gonna be interesting.
Why not
Artifacts are
Spirit
coming back.
Sisters call while we're at it? Just make sure none of it stays gone. Which they are giving us the exile graveyard effects on at least 2 of these. I was thinking it was 3, but we only went over 2.
It's really the shame is that they printed Urborg Scavengers, and it's just like a strictly worse version of Graveyard Trespasser. And that drives me a little up the wall when they do it that way, but, It was like
I
a
feel
mix
like it's
between
trying to be
Trespass.
scavenging ooze and just isn't
No,
there
no, no, no.
either.
It's trying to be Soul Flayer. They tried to print a fair Soul Flayer, and all they did was make a shittier Trespasser. Oh,
Trespasser's so good. Oh,
All
I
right,
love
guys.
Trespasser.
We're going to transition over to our final topic because we're running out of time. I wanted to highlight what we've touched on already with Standard shifting over. With the Wizards of the Coast announcement, the Standard is shifting over to a 3-year rotation. That we are not, in fact, rotating out some of the cards that people call problematic. That being Fable, Sheldred, Invoke Despair. Any of those. Not rotating for another year. So, the big question has become lately, in the past few days, is this good for Standard? Is this good for players? Is this meeting the goals of bringing in new players and encouraging them to play more Standard? So, that's the announcement just in a nutshell. And really, to kind of highlight before we get into it, because I think this is important, to to let them kind of argue it for themselves. They gave us a three-speared argument here. The first of which says, three-pronged argument, I guess is better to say. This will give current standard cards more longevity. So, right, that's good for collectors. That's good for people who want to play standard that are kind of entrenched in the game, but want to play more like forever formats, right? It's supposed to encourage those people that spend money. That's the subtext. But anyway, the second prong is it will allow mechanics and archetypes to be more effectively built on over time. So saying that we're going to boost, stuff that's been legal for a couple years now, but nobody's playing. That kind of thing. And then the final prong, it also gives us stronger tools to create an environment where decks are more colors and mechanic, and their examples given are green-white toxic, or blue-white soldiers, and less, and here's the subtext, 3-color, less mid-range, they say. Larger card pool, the format can handle bigger swings with entire decks seeded at once. They believe this gives Standard more stability, vitality, and strengthens LGS. Okay, so I put up a poll, and everybody out there can go find me on Twitter and answer the poll if you like. Is this good for Standard? Will this result in more LGS Standard events firing, and overall a better experience for Standard competitive players? I want to start with Lieutenant Watts, because Lieutenant Watts is someone who has played a more free-to-play style in recent times. I know you've said you're shifting away from that to give yourself a bigger card pool to deck build from. But in having that experience under your belt and knowing what that is like, and having to farm gold and get your missions done on Arena, what do you think of this? What do you think of this for the health of the Standard format?
I think that it is going to be good overall once people adjust to the idea. It's like everything that you do with a game that has been around for as long as Magic has and has a player base as large as Magic does, everything has growing pains. So they're going to complain for a while, and then they're going to get used to the idea. And I do think that Wizards makes a lot of valid points about it giving stability to the meta or to Standard, because they're right. We're going to have a lot more to work with, and so not only do we have a lot more to work with, but we're going to have a lot more time to work with those cards. So we're going to see decks that become more finely tuned, and we're going to see more variety in those decks, because we're going to have more cards from different sets that are all going to interact with each other in different ways to work from. And it will be very good for arena players who are free to play players, because they're going to have more time to build those decks.
Okay, so overall, you think this is a good move?
I think it's a good move, and I also think it's a smart business move for Wizards when you look at it from a business standpoint, because yes, it does increase their revenue.
Okay. Before I get to the next opinion, Aaron Forsyth at MTG Aaron on Twitter, and they use this as evidence in the article, tweeted out, over the past few years, Standard play has dried up in many stores. I have my own list of possible reasons, but I'd love to hear from the store community. Why has sanctioned Standard play declined relative to other formats in your store? And guys, we've talked about the reasons for this, why they are. I'm kind of glad that our soapboxers aren't here to take over the conversation, because I know it's been said time and time again that Wizards has shifted towards casual play in many ways in their endorsements and their card design. It's been said. I don't know if I fully agree with the statement, but it has been said. So, Darth Rictus of the Darkstream, what is your take on this? How do you feel about Standard play in the future, given this move, and given your experience, playing Pro Tour, playing professional Magic? What do you think about this?
I don't want this to come off redneck, but if you want to make Magic great again, bring back the GP circuit. Because if you want Standard to be relevant and played and fired in local game stores, you need to recreate that Pro Tour dream that you've started to recreate. And the reason everybody played like this and we all played so heavily back in the day. There were two things. One, for the kids, there was the Junior Super Series, and that was amazing. That got everybody my age deep into Magic, and it was so cheap for them to do it. It was so cheap for them to do it, and it got a generation playing cards, playing them competitively too. And the other side is the Grand Prix, the ability to potentially play against pros, to make day two, to spike a tournament. I mean, like the dream was there, and if you bombed out, you were just one of thousands bombing out and having a good time and kicking back and having some drinks and watching better players or luckier players, however you want to frame it in your mind, play on day two. I loved the GP circuit. And the thing about it is, like the Pro Tours, you always had to travel, but the GPs, there was one basically every weekend, sometimes multiple in a weekend. So you were going to get at least 2 or 3 in your region of the United States every year. So like we once every couple of years we'd get one in Nebraska, we'd get one in Minneapolis, we'd get one in Chicago, we'd get one in Kansas City. You know, I'm from the Midwest. We don't get a lot of events out here. Most of them are on East Coast or West Coast. But GPs, we had massive attendance because it was at least one big tournament guaranteed to be in our backyard every year that we could prep for and that could queue us for the Pro Tour. And that accessibility regionally was a big part of the drive for Standard. And all these people were just sitting there like, "What do you do?" "We'll just go to the Grand Prix this weekend. Why wouldn't you? It's a ton of fun. You'll get to meet people. You get to see Reed Duke and Louis Scott Vargas and Jerry Thompson all playing after round three because you used to get 3 buys if you were a good enough player and hit all the qualifications to do it. But bring back that 3 years of Standard, it gives you a deeper standard. I'm not going to argue that point because I think it is true. You do get a deeper standard. There's a reason Vintage is deeper than block constructed. There's just more cards to pick from. That said, Vintage is also ruled by very specific archetypes that are never going away because they won't print stronger cards because they literally can't without breaking the game in half for everybody else. Standard, I think if you're going to do this 3-year thing, you need to be way more active on bans. To me, this is a shitty move to try to get people to play more Alchemy because Alchemy rotates on a 2-year thing and they're going to do a lot of active bans and nerfs and all that shit. And I'm going to tell you straight up, Wizards, I'm not fucking playing Alchemy. It's never going to happen. I hate that format and I just won't do it.
Yeah, I've noticed that you and John Ramos share that opinion regarding the format, and I totally understand coming from the perspective that you're coming from the experience in Magic that you've had, why you say what you say, because the GP was a promise to be on camera for a second if you could just be good enough.
They listened to you at the GP too. I remember we played the GP with Marvel. For anybody that remembers that constructed, it was turn 4 Marvel, spin the thing, half the time you get a fucking Ulamog. Uh-oh, that's the game, right? And that was Standard. It was way more oppressive. It was almost as oppressive as the Oko era, and we all had to go to a Grand Prix and play against that monstrosity. And at the end of it, Wizards had 2 employees on site, one of whom came up to my group of players and like, "So what do you think about Standard?" And all 5 of us were like, "Ban Marvel, Jesus Christ." And literally 2 days later, they banned Marvel. And I was like, "Oh my God, they actually listened to us." But when's the last time you felt like Wizards actually listened to the Magic community about some of the concerns and reflected what we wanted them to do instead of just saying, "Okay, we hear your concerns, but money."
Right. And arguably, to play devil's advocate, it's not like the MTG community hasn't diluted itself with opinions that you could really disregard for the most part. So it's hard to listen to the whole community. But at
True.
some level, at some level, you got to give. And you can't just use every excuse for a conflict as a way to move forward with your stock, in my opinion.
If you want to get true conspiracy theory here, just for fun, and I don't believe this is the truth, but it crossed my mind a couple days ago. You know how in America we have this beautiful 2-party system? Magic has started to get there itself, where you have competitive players and you have EDH players, and they do not get along, and they are both on different extremes, like all the time. And because of this, you just see this infighting between those two, while WotC just goes, "Okay, but more money then." And it feels
Yep.
very much like the America I've grown up in, where we're like, "Oh, Democrats say this, Republicans say this," and in the meantime, both sides are like lobbyists, money.
Yep.
And it's what it feels like, which is why it pisses me off so much, because I hate watching the slow decline of an empire of a game, much like the American way.
And other countries can relate to this as well. If you're watching from an international audience, I know a lot of places in the world going through this right now.
Hell, they all had to endure 4 years of Trump. They know exactly what it's like. We all watched Twitter for 4 years melt the fuck down every day. Like, we know what's up.
Some places had their own version as well, like Boris Johnson. But
Right.
I wanted to get to another opinion that I'm interested in here. I want to hear from Perry Dabo, because Perry Dabo also, like, each of us comes to Magic with different baggage. I feel like getting to know you guys. Perry Dabo, how do you feel about Standard's health? Knowing that you play other formats, that you dabble in a little bit of EDH yourself, how do you feel about this?
I don't mind it, honestly, at all. And that comes from still trying to play paper when I can. Just trying to collect the land base alone for a 3-color deck in Standard can run you $300-ish. That's not easy to just spend money on a mana base for. So if I have more time to just collect a casual pack here and there, pull a tri-land, pull a dual land, fast land, whatever it may be, I think it makes the environment at the LGS much more viable and a little less a little less oppressive. Like you're more liable to be able to go and compete at the Friday Night Magics and actually have something that's relevant for the Standard if they actually play it. That's another problem, is they aren't hardly even doing Standard at these places anymore. And then as far as these cards being with us this much longer, we have to adapt. Like, everybody is up in arms about Fable, Invoke, Shelly, all stupid powerful cards. We know that. If you aren't already building around the fact that somebody else is going to be playing that, or if you aren't playing them yourself, then that's just going to be a problem for you. Like, people have figured out how to make sure Invoke doesn't hit as hard. Run a Mirrex in your deck. Tap that thing on your end step and make a little 1/1 token, so when Invoke hits, they aren't drawing as much. You aren't getting burnt for as much. Run anything with counter spells. 2 mana, stop a 5 mana spell, probably leave me tapped and wide open if I try to play Invoke. 1 white mana now, Surge of Salvation. Completely stop my Invoke for 1 mana, leaving me tapped. Like, these are all cards that if you haven't figured out how to work around yet, then I think that's a little bit on you. Like, knowing all these things are out there has made me a better player, because I know now to not run head in to these situations. Like, if I see Grixis or anything with an untapped blue, I'm not trying to throw my 5-drop spell out there. I will wait. I'll wait until they tap. I will throw the bait out there till I know they're roundabout out of them, give or take the meta list or a different build or so, and just work through it. All these cards being here has made me up my game, so I have no problem with it being here longer. I'll just learn more.
A quick aside, by the
Go ahead.
way, Wizards understands how to make Standard relevant. They've done it multiple times. Hell, there was a point where ELO ranking was such a big deal that most of the pro players refused to play FNMs because they didn't want to accidentally lose to a scrub and just tank their ELO, because ELO used to be how you queued for the Pro Tour. It was a chess ranking system. And they realized that the way to get around that was, 1, to erase the ELO system, which they did, and 2, they started making these amazing FNM promos that you only got by playing all the time. And so, like, once a year, there was a Christmas package waiting with foil textless damnations, lightning bolts, negates. It was wild. And I played every FNM for like 3 years because of it, as did everyone I knew. So and it cost them almost nothing. Again, these are pieces of paper to them. They are already printing these. They cost pennies to ship these out, and the goodwill in the community is absurd when they do, and people will come in and play. Like, they have the means to correct this situation completely and the knowledge of proven out systems on how to correct it. They just fucking refuse to do it, and that's what drives me insane.
That's a really great point, especially about the fact that it costs them almost nothing to give us, like, I remember I used to play Call of Duty 2 or whatever, and when you'd get shot, there were quotes that they throw up on the screen. This is how I learned this quote by Napoleon, that men will do anything for little bits of paper or ribbon. Like, and that's so true about this game. We will jump through hoops for these little bits of paper.
Oh yeah, and I mean, they've dismantled the judges program. I know this is a tangent. I apologize. I'll get off my soapbox in a moment. I promise. But the judges program, I had a friend used to do high level judging. You know, like level 3 judge, and they would comp your room. They would pay you a decent wage. They would give you so many judge promos that only judges could get. They were all worth hundreds of dollars. And again, that cost them like pennies to make. They don't give a shit. They're just printing money. Like they have their own printing press of money. It's just magic cards, and it only has value because we decide it does, much like the US dollar. You see my
My
point here,
God,
though.
the parallels. There are way too many parallels. Stop it.
Right. You see my point, though. Like, they have the means to correct every single one of these problems. They are consciously choosing not to. And then they want to spend $250,000 to hire a director of strategic communication, basically crisis communicator that's like, sorry, we fucked you again. Anyway, and that's a job they're hiring for. I applied for it, by the way. I applied for 3 positions within Wizards just to see if I could get one of them. Because I mean, hell, why not? It's a dream to work and play Magic, right? But I look at these positions as I'm applying for them, and I'm saying to myself, why do you need some of these? These shouldn't be necessary. Just stop doing shitty things. Like it's not that hard. You built up goodwill for 15 years, and everybody was on board. Just don't do the shitty things anymore. I promise you. Magic players may be fickle, but they'll come back. They do all
Exactly.
the
We
time.
always do. Always. They
Yes,
can't.
we do.
They know that we do this thing where we quit for 3 years and come back for 3 years and quit for 3. They know it because it's in their surveys. They're like, how many times have you played Magic before? Like, have you ever left the game and come back?
Like I've never seen a company that functioned more like drug addicts than WotC, because they're like, we have the cocaine. You will come back for the cardboard crack, and we fucking know it. Now take the abuse.
Yep.
And we're all just sitting here like, please just stop overcharging us, and please just let us enjoy it. And you're like, no.
Give us
It's
more
just, oh,
places. Give us more places where we can dose up, please.
yeah, we just need a little hit of cardboard crack. That's all we need. And WotC's like, then you can deal with it yourself. We're not doing fucking anything.
I wanted to ask Luis in particular because you sometimes play. Do you sometimes play in the Latin American scene? Like, do you sometimes play at your local LGS?
No, not really. It's been years since I played. It was regional tournaments, but nowadays I don't play really in cardboard.
It's more of a
But
collector's
my
thing for
point of
you.
view, yeah. I mean, I really don't buy cardboard these days. It's too expensive. But mm, talking about the new 2 years rotation, I like it. I think it's a double-edged sword, and this is my problem with this is I and I was talking about this before. I don't want this to become a Yu-Gi-Oh game, and I will explain
Mm,
with that. Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't have rotation. I mean, this, for what I know, the original first set that came out is still standard legal or legal in the game. But so they can tell they keep making more powerful and more powerful and more powerful cards, and that's a problem I can see in that you have in Book Despair you have these powerful cards, so you need to make at least really good cards that are equal to sell. But my problem is that we end up like something like Throne of the Drain. I mean, that's the one I remember, that the cards were so overpowered, and and I mean the game can be just very stealth from my point of view when all the cards can kill you. Second point, mm, I don't have a trouble with alchemy. I like it. I know that some players don't hate it,
for the record, I
and
like
some
it
some
too.
players hate it. Alchemy. I find it like it's a very interesting concept, a very good concept. But man, and I will throw this to the people. The first time that the new cards came from Alchemy and from Historic, people doesn't read the cards. They were cards that they were better than before, and I see people and I watched people bitching and moaning that they had destroyed their card when it was better, but they didn't bother to read. People doesn't bother to read. I have seen a lot, and I do watch Reddit. People telling, "No, Alchemy is destroying the game. Alchemy, blah 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 blah." Because I didn't read that the event was Alchemy. I mean, you're playing a card game. Learn to read the cards. And I'm not apologist of Wizards of the Coast. I'm very skeptical of these 2 years because they have so hands-off approach on the bans, and what Alchemy was supposed to be that they were nerfing cards and buffing cards, but when the first nerfs came out, all the people hate. I don't remember. They nerf one soldier. It was from the first set that came out. Let me check it. Give me a second. Mhm. It was a lot. It was very played in white green live game. Let me search it.
Oh
Give me a second.
yeah. Are you talking about the enchantment?
No. It was in Strath. It was white.
Was it the 4-cost knight or the 4-cost?
Yeah, Inquisitor Captain.
Yes, Inquisitor Captain. That's who it was.
Inquisitor Captain. Yeah. When they nerfed it, I saw people that was hating alchemy cards, and they were playing that in historic, and they hate the nerf. It was as these nerfs were so hated that I think that Wizards didn't want to have more approach on alchemy, and I think that that's killed the format. My worries about having 2 years with the same cards is that they print something so overpowered that they take tier 0 deck, and they will take a lot of time to ban it or nerf it or make a change. Because sometimes we all want to see the rotation and it's finally we forget about Goldspan Dragon. Imagine if Goldspan Dragon was still like people hated it because it was a very good card. It was a little too overpowered and they never touch it. But no, except in Alchemy, and I like the changes they made in Alchemy with Goldspan Dragon and Historic. But my problem with this is mm, if they are letting the cards stay more time, they need to be more active in the bans, more active in switching the meta, and they need to be very, very good at making the new sets balanced. Not that every new set is extremely overpowered, because it will ruin the game. For the players' points sake, yeah, this is for them to sell more cards, but I think that it also helps out the standard normal people that doesn't want to get the entire sets every new set. And I mean, I like vampires, and vampires were about to rotate out. Well, I have another tier to make a better deck with that, and I don't have to spend a lot of money because also we have a very good mana base right now. Lands are still very expensive. I think the mana base is the most expensive card in standard, vintage, historic, legal. Everything is mana base. So if we have a very good mana base and it can stay like 2 years, I think it will be also a lot cheaper for the standard player to maintain a good deck. That's my opinion on the matter.
Thank you, Luis. I think that vibes with some of the ways I feel about it as well. Two things from what you've said. One, I try to think about alchemy in terms of the current environment of video games. Like if you just step back from the tree of Magic the Gathering for a second, look at the forest environment of video games. Patch updates in competitive games are a regular thing. And that's not something that we're used to in Magic the Gathering, aside from bans and restrictions on cards, is them artificially kind of changing things through that. mechanic. And so alchemy, I think, is an implementation of a concept that some people are already familiar with in gaming, and especially in mobile card games. So I can see where they're trying to market to other games with that concept. So I think it's fine if you're familiar with that concept. I think it's a good translation of it in Magic. But two, I highly, highly agree with your point, and the point we were watching SBMTG talk about this in his reaction video, and I highly agree with him there because it was one of his main points as well. Is that if they're going to do this, in both cases, the alchemy format, going out every 2 years, and the standard format going out every 3. I think they need to be very, very disciplined about their bans and restrictions, be very on top of it, right? If they're not active with these so-called patch updates in alchemy in particular, then yeah, it's a dead idea. It's bad implementation on a good idea, unfortunately, and that's my take on it. All right, any guy, we're running out of time, but I've given everybody a shout out in the chat. Everybody who's watching, go check out Lieutenant Watts, Luis Dragon, Paradabo, the Dark Stream, Darth Rictus of the Dark Stream channel, and myself, Max Damage All Nines. Give us a follow, the MTG Rebellion crew. Any final thoughts, guys? We can go around. You don't have to tell us when you're streaming, just, or you can if that's what you want to do with your time. But Lieutenant Watts, what's your final thought?
My final thought is I'm actually really excited for this 3-year standard with, what was it we were talking about earlier? I think it was like 12 sets with
12.
a total of 13 sets with the micro sets that they're doing. I'm super excited for that many different cards to be in standard at one time.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm excited for that as well. Luis, do you have a final thought for us?
Yeah, I think if Wizards of the Coast play very well the new sets, I think it will revitalize a standard because we can see a lot of decks, a more diversity, and the game will be um, much more fun. But if they fuck it up this opportunity, I think it could be the end of standard as we know it.
We'll go to some other kind of format as the premier, Pioneer? All right.
I don't know.
I hope not. Paradabo, final thought, sir.
I mean, I'm happy with what they're doing for the most part. I can definitely deal with standard going a little longer. It gives me more time to wrap my head around builds I want to play with. Just don't because I get horse blinders on, and that's pretty much where I'm at right now. Just happy to be playing Magic.
Yeah, more Magic for the people. I think that's a good thing in general. If we can have more decks be viable, that would be great. But like you guys have all said and repeated, bad implementation is going to leave a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth for standard. All right, Darth Rictus, give us your final thought.
Fuck the Pinkertons. I'm gonna leave it there.
You have absorbed the spirit of John Ramos and the Turtle Box all in one tonight and have become our I swear to God, I swear y'all, this is not a political podcast.
No, it's not. I'll calm down in the future, but I just have to get this one out there.
You're good. You're good. You're good. There's always one person in here that gets on the soapbox a lot, and that'll be you tonight. But I appreciate it. I appreciate all your takes. All you guys did really well talking about this stuff. This stuff requires some nuance to understand and to talk about. And I'm just glad I'm in a group where we can disagree and we can agree and disagree and all that back and forth without anybody getting their feelings hurt. You guys are awesome. All right, we're gonna close out for the night on that note. Thank you for watching. This has been the MTG Rebelcast. As we say, untap, upkeep, resist.
Resist.
All right, have a good night, everybody.